The Shaggy Jenkins Show.
We have to make Russia great again.
On the Pacifica Radio Network.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome to it. Trust me, it's been a long day. Hey, coming up on the show today, we'll talk histories, mysteries, what happens behind closed doors, and maybe a couple of more things about immigration, the state of Texas opening up their legislature, and the year that so far has seen no government working. Okay, partially. Before we get to all of that, my name is Shaggy Jenkins, critical thinker, problem solver, guy just left a normal insane, and sometimes found in my right mind at shaggyjenkins.com or wherever fine social media is served at Shaggy Live. This guy can be found somewhere deep in the heart of Texas, probably not chanting Remember the Alamo, but this week, starting it off with a little bit of history, please welcome a former politician, current instructor, and all-around swell guy, Drew Landry.
Hey, Shaggy, it's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always great to be back. This is the thing, before we get into today's show, yesterday, 100 years ago, was an important anniversary as far as the highest office in the United States. What was that, Drew?
It was the 100th anniversary of the death of our 26th president, Theodore Teddy Roosevelt. And very important figure in 20th century politics and New York politics and just, American history.
Yeah. Now, let's keep in mind that this is a guy that was told he was asthmatic as a kid and decided, nah, screw that, I'm going to beat asthma's ass, and did.
Yeah, I mean, he's there's just so much the determination, so much energy, so much, very interesting stuff about this guy. He died at the age of 60. So, I mean, this is a guy who, was our youngest president to ever take office. He was 42 whenever he took the oath of office in 1901. So, I mean, this is just an interesting fella, through and through.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, he was so interesting that his vice president, Thomas R. Marshall, said when it came to the event of Roosevelt's death had to take Teddy sleeping, for if Roosevelt had been awake, surely there would have been a fight.
That is so accurate. That is so true.
Yeah, because when it comes to Theodore Roosevelt, he loved two things, kicking ass and wide open spaces. And that's kind of where I want to start our little comparison from history to the modern world. Because, Drew, ever since Donald Trump threw his, and I'm going to start calling them this, his temper Trumptums, over this southern border wall, which we'll get into a sec while that's kind of important to guys like you, and not so much to guys like me, because we're thinking on an island, you're going to build a wall? Okay. Where? Can you build it between?
You probably want a wall around the island so people can't come in.
Right. Attention, howlies, go home. Okay. No.
Yeah.
That only makes sense, by the way, if you've ever been to Hawaii. You'll understand what howley is and all that. Okay, but moving on. Theodore Roosevelt loved wide open spaces. He was, I guess you could say, hobby, a gamesman, traveled all over the world, met interesting creatures, and then shot them in the head, because that's what you do when you're a guy that ran under his own party after the political party he was with thought he was too extreme. Yeesh. But Drew, Theodore Roosevelt created something that, in the hearts of one Leslie Knope, somewhere in Pawnee, Indiana, is real near and dear. What is the one system that Theodore Roosevelt created that we kind of have to worry about now in the shutdown?
Yeah, President Roosevelt, before he became president, was a big admirer of the national parks and of pristine areas, and so he signed into law the Antiquities Act that made it available for the president to really just protect these pristine areas. And whenever he was a younger guy, he went out on these travels into the western parts and into the mountain western parts, and just was stunned by them and said, this has to be here for our future. Mm-hmm. And so in his legacy, we have the national parks. We have a lot of things really to credit to him, but that is one of the biggest things around, no question.
Oh, well, I know. And a lot of people are like, you're not going to talk about the Roosevelt doctrine, the walk softly and carry a big stick, the whole impetus for how the United States became a foreign policing power in the world. Yeah, that was all Theodore Roosevelt. Thing is, though, is when it came to national parks, he had a very, very soft spot for untouched land. And
very much so.
This is the thing I'm going to bring up. Does Donald Trump also have a thing for untouched land? Because now those park rangers aren't getting paid and they're not doing any touching of our national parks.
Well, I think if anything is untouched by the president, he wants to later touch it. That's kind of a mean thing to say, but anyway.
Hey, leave Michael Cohen out of this because he's not around to pay you off.
No, no, he's not. So anyway, I kind of wish he was. He could pay me off. But anyway, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, look, a lot of these workers, whether they're federal workers, whether they are anything to do with the federal government at this moment, feel like that they are pawns in this gamemanship between he and Congress, and dealing with this wall that he wants along the southern border of the United States. So, he's made a clear stand in the ground. He's made his line, his red line. I want the wall. I want it now. And we're not going to open up the government until I get $5 billion for this wall. And that's how, that right there is how he's being portrayed. There are others who will say, look, at least he's standing up. At least he's made a line. He said, this is what I want. If I don't get anything like it, we're not, government is just going to be shut down. And he's even said this could go on for months. This could go on for years. And that's gotten a lot of federal workers very, very concerned, and I don't blame them. They're rather nervous. Oh. And if you wanted to take a vacation and go to either the Smithsonian or go to a national park, there are many in this country, more often than not, they'll be shut down, and you won't be able to really enter them.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that you said more often than not, because, look, in a state like Hawaii, where our national parks are literally some of the most beautiful places in the world, you're welcome, world, one of the things that we have is a mandate that says these parks being so important to our state's tourist industry, which does do a lot of the support of all of our jobs out here. Because these things are so important, they have to remain open. But because they have to remain open, doesn't necessarily mean the people that are tending them are going to get paid. And that has led to one interesting story last week. And Drew, this one is going to cut to the weirdest heart of any story ever. Are you ready for this?
Bring it on.
Okay. I oftentimes talk about how the state of Hawaii, which is kind of a quasi-state because there happens to be this whole international thing going on of whether or not the United States annexed the Hawaiian nation in a proper way. Well, as such, laws and public lands work differently. And, Drew, how familiar are you with laws dictating abandoned lands by the United States government?
Well, I can't really say I'm too familiar with it, but I'm going to wait for you to tell me.
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to the state of Hawaii, what a lot of native indigenous Hawaiians, not people born in the state, the people that are actually ethnically the, Hawaiians, this is the thing. They have started to go back to these parks and stuff and put down native symbols, therefore basically taking ownership of an abandoned government land. Now, we have a word called kapu, and there's all kinds of things. And once the kapu is put down, that means that the tribe, the actual indigenous Hawaiian people, have claimed sovereign use of that land. Now, I am sure when it comes to the United States and dealing with First Nations people, that not a lot of consideration has been given around this whole shutdown. But as a lot of these national reserves are former indigenous lands, Drew, the problem that happens here in Hawaii with, who actually owns it when the government abandons it could be a problem kind of everywhere, couldn't it?
Oh, there's no question. This is an area that, look, we need leadership on this, and the president can't be just, and no one in the federal government can really just say, look, we're just going to abandon this area and just leave it be. But with the government shutdown being what it is, that's kind of where we are. And he's, I don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, both sides of this entire shutdown have really said, we're sticking to our thing. We have new House leadership that's trying to fund the government through passing several parts of bills. And so, this is, one side's trying, the other side's saying, doesn't matter what you do, it's just going to not be what I want, so just forget about it. Mm-hmm. And, this is where we are. These furloughed workers, our national parks, all of these things that we would depend on, and we're really going to feel the effects of this if this continues to linger. I mean, the longest shutdown ever was in 1995 during the Clinton administration, mm-hmm. which that led to his own problems, as we found out a few years later. But look, that ended within a month, give or take, and so. If the president's saying this could take way longer, that should be a real big scare and a big concern to not just federal workers, but to everybody in the country.
Yeah, because this is the thing. He said years. And when it comes to keeping things shut down for years, he's doing it all over this border wall. And that's where I kind of want to segue from federal stories and history into state stories, because the state that Donald Trump talks about more than any state in the United States is Texas. He never calls it by Texas. He never names it by names. It's kind of like a Playboy model that he slept with. But the thing is that Donald Trump constantly talks about a southern border wall. And before we get to that, and the whole government shutdown, a lot of people forget that the inside of Texas, because we've talked about Texas for 2 years now, never mentioning it, but coming up this week in Texas is something that didn't happen last year, that only happens every other year, and that could kind of put a weird local spin on some national stories. Drew, what's happening deep in the heart of Texas this week?
Yes, while the stars are bright and big and bright and all that, we're going to have the opening gavel, the opening part of the 86th regular session take place this week. Texas is unique. There's not other states, I think Montana might do this too, where the legislature will meet what's called biannually, once every 2 years. This is the 6th Constitution. Now, you may say, where in the world? And I don't want to bore our listeners on this too much, so we won't get too deep into it. Yeah. But we've had 6 constitutions as either a country or a state. And the Constitution of 1876 is what we are currently under here. And what this calls for is a weakening of really the central powers of Texas, and that the legislature will meet once every 2 years. So the idea is you have the election, and then a couple months later, you'll have the session take place. The session will last 140 days. So it will go from early January to around Memorial Day. Now, they only work 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. So 140 days during that time. I know. Yeah, there's that. So
you guys are more laid back than Hawaii, by the way. I mean, when surf goes up here, all the shops shut down. It's like, oh, surf, sorry, brah, closed for lunch. Yeah, lunch lasts 4 hours.
That's a heck of a lunch break.
Yeah, well, you got to get in the waves, then you got to get out, then you got to dry, then you got to tan a little bit, then you got to make sure that you don't look all, smelly and stuff. Then you go back to work. Then you see the customer standing outside, and you're like, the beach was better. So you go back out, about an hour later, you come back in and open up before the boss comes by to get your end of the day reports.
Okay, yeah, what a life in Hawaii. I mean, that's just awesome.
Yeah, by the way, it's not really like that, and there's a lot of shop owners in Hawaii going, I wish, brah.
Who is this?
Who is this holiday? Anyway, but the thing is that we have a legislator that meets every single year. So this was kind of like one of those, wow, you guys don't have a working government every other year, huh?
Yeah. It's just what the state is used to. This is what what all the Texans have been used to for that time. It's been a very much a leave me alone type of governing style, and if you want to meet every year, it's kind of like, what other kind of bad things can you do? And if you look at the past few legislative sessions, in 2017, 2015, 2013, you kind of get the idea. Maybe it's a good thing they only meet once every 2 years, because some of the stuff that they pass is kind of odd.
Yeah.
So so with this new session upcoming, there's going to be one different player in all of this, and that's going to be the Speaker of the House. The lieutenant governor won his reelection, the governor won his reelection, and the same party that was in power in the last session will return in this session. But a different speaker could be bring in different priorities, and so we'll just see how that plays out. But I don't really see this being, people are having a bit of a hopeful spring for this particular session, and it might be different than the last one. I'm having a tough time really seeing that. So.
Yeah, but here's the thing, because there's two particular acts that I want to talk a little bit coming up in the Texas legislature. One is what I would like to consider the most annoying thing about Texas, and no, I am not talking about the Dallas Cowboys. No. This is the thing. Okay, look. Us and our people that work in Arizona, we're always kind of on the same page with each other, because those two states right now don't have this annoying, anachronistic throwback to the pre-industrial age and the thinkings of one Benjamin Franklin and daylight savings time. You guys in Texas, in your legislature, actually have a bill coming up that could eradicate daylight savings time. Thank you? And why?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of bills that will get introduced that kind of make you scratch your head and go, what's the cause of this? Because the whole idea of the legislature and even government is to solve problems. You're going to have to tell me what the problem is. And I know it's a pain in the rear for people who are who don't recognize.
Big rear, big pain. Twice a year.
But you kind of have to understand that what's really the main problem here. Do understand that since Texas is so large, it's incredibly diverse, and there's another part of the state that actually is in a different time zone. And so if you are in El Paso, you're actually underneath New Mexico, and you're in Mountain West time zone. You're in Mountain time zone, which is different than if you're not in El Paso in Texas, then you're in Central time zone. Look, you kind of have to wonder here, what's the problem? That's what they're going to have to really argue about. I don't know how much of a priority this is going to be for this upcoming session. Could be something that people could kind of maybe slide into another particular part of a bill. Mm-hmm. That happens quite a bit. But we'll see what happens. I mean, the ongoing argument about daylight savings, that those who are just adamant about it will say that this is a school safety issue, that during the times that daylight savings is out early in the mornings, it's very dark and could be very difficult for drivers to not see these children or any other or anyone else, and could possibly blow through the stop sign or hit one of the children. So if you keep the daylight savings going, then it will be daylight during the 7:30, 8 o'clock hour, and then you would avoid this type of thing.
Well,
look,
I mean, I'm just going to throw this out here, though. It seems a little weird and counterproductive that we're worried about getting kids into school when that's where they get shot.
Yeah, yeah.
Just throwing that out there. Maybe
that's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, a car wind them in the morning. They're like, you know what? I've tried my chances for the day. I'm going home. Maybe. I don't know. That might have to do with a little bit of my view of Texas frontiersmanship, though.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting point. But when you look at daylight savings and how it's working out, I mean, the state is on daylight savings more so than it's not. I mean, we're on it from March all the way up until it seems like till November, and then we're off of it from mid-November until March. So it's you kind of have to wonder here. Okay, well, why not just be on it the entire time, or quite frankly, or get rid of it. So I don't know what's going to happen here. That's just kind of where we are. It really made me scratch my head and go, why is this up here? Like I consider just as trivial as the controversial bathroom bill that came out in the last session, or even in the special session dealing with trees. I mean, there was a bill dealing with trees in Austin, Texas. It was one of the most head-scratching things that you kind of go, what's the problem?
Okay, two things. One, are you sure of the definition of tree? Because two, this is Austin we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Just going to throw those out there.
Well, yeah, there was some, just a quick Reader's Digest. There was this ongoing issue with trees that have been around for a long time, and the city wanted to do something with them. So the state overstepped the city and said, you can or can't. It was one of these little tit-for-tat silly things that just simply didn't make any sense to me. Didn't make sense to a whole lot of other people, and people were just wondering, why was that even a thing? Same thing can be said about this daylight savings time issue.
Yeah, that was Representative Lyle Larson. He's out of San Antonio, by the way, so thank you, San Antonio. House Bill 49 is going to be that one. Now, this is before I get to the bill that I thought would be kind of fun, because it was proposed by, of all people, Joe Moody from El Paso. El Paso. Okay, we've talked about El Paso on the show before, it being one of the deeply more conservative parts of the state. But
no. It's actually one of the more liberal areas.
Oh, liberal. Oh, okay, because this is the thing. I was kind of confused because before there is the law that is kind of a common sense law, I did not know this. But Moody wants to repeal part of the Texas Penal Code that lists homosexual conduct as a crime. And even though the United States Supreme Court said that law is unconstitutional, it's still been on the books of Texas, and now Moody is out to get rid of it. Is there a lot of the legislators, because you guys only do the biannual thing, that is going back and saying, that was a dumb idea, we need to repeal that one first?
Yep. Oh, yeah. You often find that, I mean, believe it or not, you find this type of thing normal with old state laws. There are so many old laws that are on the books that are that are unenforceable anymore. It's just kind of like, well, we have to rather just ignore that. That particular one, definitely being up there. I mean, I think it was Mississippi ratified the 13th Amendment in 1995. So, that was on the back burner for a long time. But
yeah, I think Alabama just got rid of, what was it, slavery? I don't know, there's a couple of states that still have slavery, I think. Well, technically.
It's so weird. I mean, you find a lot of these older laws and you go, why is that still on the books? We need to get rid of that. And I think that's exactly what happened here with Representative Moody. Yeah,
because, look, this is the thing. I mean, I could also talk about, House Bill 222 by Matt Krause, who is basically trying to get rid of paid sick leave, corporate sick leave. He's basically saying, look, by law, you don't have to offer anybody nothing. This is Texas. Yeehaw!
Yeah.
But instead of talking about that, this is the thing. House Bill 84, which, and this is the thing I noticed about Texas, and I think we've only got 30 seconds for you to answer this, but actually about a minute here. But when it comes to Texas, the filing for laws is usually like Ticketmaster when a big act comes into town, isn't it? They line
That's
up for
exactly
days ahead of the session.
Absolutely. It was like a week after the election. Boom, you started seeing a lot of the representatives filing a lot of their bills that they really wanted to get in there. That's commonplace, and they're going to try to bargain as much as they can up until this week.
Yeah, I mean, because look, let's just go ahead and put this in the words of the Texas Tribune. Quote: Senator Judith Zaffirini, I think I hope saying that right, who is known to have her staff line up outside the clerk's office hours before the pre-filing starts. It appears that there is a little bit of a rush to get in law. I mean, do you guys just love democracy there, or what?
Well, we elect everybody in the state. At least it seems that way. We have partisan races for almost everything, from county sheriff to Supreme Court justices to even your justice of the peace, which you kind of have to scratch your head and go, what's the partisanship of justice of the peace? Is one person not going to give as many guilty verdicts as the next, or what's the deal with that? So it's
my peaceful's weird. More peaceful than yours.
Yeah, I say, boy.
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Look,
so that's kind of where we are on that.
Coming up, we've got to talk about the bill that I have been kind of scratching my head over because it came from a place like Texas. Yeah, they're talking about decriminalizing marijuana in the Lone Star State. Up next, it's the Shaggy Jenkins Show.
I don't remember how it started. Our back and forth. Victory. Fumble. Repeat. It always came back.
Okay, here we go, throw it!
Yeah. You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
Nice.
This is the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome back to it. Yeah, we called Houston, and ground control says everything is A-OK. We've been talking about the Texas legislator in the first part of the show, and if you missed that, well, you should probably subscribe to us on either Spotify or wherever fine social media is served at Shaggy Live. You can also, find us at our website, shaggyjenkins.com. This guy you can find somewhere out in Texas, kind of scratching his head over why I know so much about his legislator. It's because they printed out a whole list of the laws coming up. Please welcome from the great Lone Star State, former politician himself and all-around educated educator, Drew Landry.
Hey, good to be back, Shaggy. Thank you.
Now, we have had I don't know how to say this, about 40 attempts today to do this show, and each one of them has been more catastrophically failing than the last. But as far as things being ballyhooed and known to fail, one of the things that we can talk about that has always been tossed up in the state legislature of Texas is marijuana law reformation. And it looks like, thanks to Senator Moody. Joe Moody. He was the same guy for the Homosexual Conduct Act of the first part of the show. Well, now he's back at it again. The Democrat from El Paso actually wants to put in Bill 63, House Bill 63, wants to put out there that, and keep in mind, he's not the only one. Several state legislators have put forward marijuana acts. But his act is important because instead of just reforming the medical side of it, he also wants to make it a misdemeanor offense if somebody is caught for less than 1 ounce, taking it out of the criminal court systems and putting it more into a here's your ticket, mail it in to us, good day. Is this kind of surprising from Texas?
You know, what's very interesting about this is that, I say this a lot, is that Texas, to much of people's surprise, is incredibly diverse, and that you have the pockets of Texas that are incredibly liberal, such as, El Paso, Austin, Dallas, and Houston. Those metroplexes, even San Antonio. Those are some pretty liberal areas. Those are, they put forth some interesting progressive, ideas out there. And you have your rural areas and your suburban areas that are much more conservative. So, that's where the great mix is. And with what Representative Moody is wanting to put forward here is, I think, a movement that is trying to keep up with other states. And trying to, say, look, Texas has a wide variety of veterans, has a wide variety of people who are getting, put the hammer to on federal offenses and even jail time when it comes to having, that particular amount of marijuana. Let's say, let's put those particular things to better use. Let's have them either fund public education or our transportation issues. Let's get rid of this addiction that people have to opioids and to other prescription drugs. Let's fight this in the best common sense way by legalizing in some way, shape, or form, or decriminalizing in some way, shape, or form the use of marijuana.
Yeah, because I didn't know this, and this one is kind of an unattached bill to this, but in House Joint Resolution 24, this has been proposed by Charlie Green out of Fort Worth. He's a conservative, but what he's saying under this resolution is that the state of Texas should, by law, be required to fund at least half of their public schools. Now, I was like, whoa, there's a privatization of public schools in Texas I wasn't aware of, apparently, huh?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest issues that came out of the last session and led to in the 2018 election was dealing with the funding for public ed. And there was a big fuss made about it, and the fact that the funding formula, it has a lot to do with people's property taxes. And so there's this interesting, very teeter-totter relationship between public ed funding and people's property taxes. If your property taxes go up, that means public ed finance has gone down. And if your public ed from the state level goes up, your property taxes will go down. So it's a bit of a teeter-totter relationship. It's confusing. It's not exactly the most exciting thing to really talk about. What Representative Green is calling for here is that the state share be at least half of the budget. That would greatly increase the state share that it used to be at those levels some age ago, but nowadays with the different type of leadership that they have, they've gotten away from it. And then there's been some sort of a small movement from Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick to try to bring in school vouchers and give in a privatization and to bring in more money for charter schools. All of these things have been tried and to be brought in, and a lot of them have not been successful. But a new session, there's going to be new tries for this. And so what Representative Green is doing here is saying, hey, look, because of the funding formula and because of people's ties to property taxes, if we can make it at least half the state budget, that will lower people's property taxes.
And this is kind of an interesting thing, because in states like Colorado, who did tie in their marijuana industry taxing into their education, it would seem like kind of a slam dunk for, and I know this is going to seem weird to you, but this is how most negotiations take place in that world, or in this case, we'll call it El Paso. Moody kind of needs to take Green behind the woodshed and say, hey, man, try this. How would you like it if that paid for education? Yeah. And then, like 15 minutes later, after they've discussed the political ramifications of Wookiee civilization within Star Wars expanded universe, not the original universe, the expanded universe, then it does seem like this House resolution to make the state pay for public schools and this push for reforming marijuana laws, especially in a place like Texas, which is starting to find itself surrounded by other states doing these kind of acts and using the tax benefit for their education system. Is there a chance, and I'm fingers crossed here, just like back in the 1980s when you got some chocolate in my peanut butter and I got some peanut butter in your chocolate, is there any two chances of these two worlds in Texas ever colliding?
Yes, there is a chance. How highly is it that it, and pun, I wasn't intended on that, but how great will this be?
Hey, man, that was pretty funny there, the joke with a hi, man. Go on.
How great will that be in this session? I don't know. But I can see this happening in the next maybe 2 or 3 sessions down the road where we will institute some sort of aspect where they'll bring in the fines for for the marijuana usage of that, and either go into teacher pay, either go into the classroom, whatever the case may be, going into some aspect of public school finance. We did that with the lottery. Texas instituted the Texas Lottery in the early 1990s, and the idea was that 100% of it would go to public education. Well, that hasn't been the case, and I think that's what some people's fears are, is that, if we tie in weed to it, how much are we certain it'll be every single dime, or will other particular groups want to get money for it? I mean, they'll have to be kind of crafty in how they're going to do this. And there are some lawmakers who have been there for some time who are crafty and can figure out a nifty compromise to some particular ways as to how that will work. But, there's other particular, monetary ways that the state is using. But the property tax thing is what really get people upset, because they're not adding any more things to their house, and yet they're finding that their added value has gone up, and they're kind of wondering, how is that possible? And what you tell them is, well, the state share of public education has gone down, therefore your property tax has gone up, and that really gets people upset.
I hate to say this, but whoever came up with that kind of a measure in Texas surely was high.
And is surely dead, too. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but this is the thing that kind of gets me, because, I have always, when it comes to thinking about marijuana laws across the United States, one, here in Hawaii, we were enacting medical marijuana laws back in 1996. You're welcome, America. You're really welcome. But besides giving the world Maui Wowie, we also kind of gave other governments a working model of how to think about marijuana reformation. And Texas, typically, in the lead up to Colorado's vote, in the lead up to California's vote, in the lead up to Washington's vote, Washington, D.C.'s vote, Maine's vote, every single time a state approached reforming marijuana laws, Texas kind of always reacted with, "Not in my backyard, you killer weed." And you'd hear the shotguns and somewhere in the distance a cow mooing. But you didn't really hear a lot of progressive thoughts about marijuana. And that's one of the things that was interesting, because, like I said, if it had just been Moody, if it had just been Joe Moody out of El Paso, that wouldn't have been a big shock, because he's done a couple of common sense kind of, let's adjust the laws for the sensitivity of modern times. Now, he's done that, but at the same time, Moody comes forward with this act and says, yeah, let's pull this back. And he's not the only one. Is it odd to you that Texas is as forward-thinking? Okay, well, you're about 25 years off the rest of the country. Hi, we're the rest of the country here in Hawaii. But is it shocking to you at this turn from the legislators of the past to where we are now?
I don't think it's too shocking when it comes to this particular issue, because what we're finding here is that there's other states that have done this, and they're making some money off of it, and they're helping out with their debt and helping to fund other particular projects and other departments and programs. This is a great step forward. Usually the ongoing stereotype of Texas is we're backwards and it doesn't really do a whole lot, just rather reactive as opposed to being proactive.
Yeah. Texas, at least from Hawaii's standpoint, Texas, it's a good place to be incarcerated or get stabbed.
Yeah. But there are many elected officials who are doing what they can to try to reverse that particular stereotype. The ongoing idea is within the cities and the ongoing lucrative business climate that they have. I mean, there's Super Bowls that are coming here. There are that have been here. There's the space stations that are here. There's a big technological boom that's taking place here. So these are types of things that are drawing people to either relocate or even to visit Texas. Let's not forget that if you like pulled pork and any type of barbecue, Texas rivals a lot of states on this particular thing. If you ask a native Texan where's the best barbecue, they'll probably point to the joint just right around the corner, because it probably does. Now, I know you might have something to say about that.
Well, I was just going to throw this out here, that Texas is famous for brisket or beef-based barbecue. Hi, us in North Carolina, we're the ones that gave the nation the pulled pork barbecue. And, by the way, we took it from West African slaves.
Well, okay, way to put a whole buzzkill on that. Thanks a lot. But truth hurts a lot, But
go ahead and ask where that brisket came from.
Yeah, I won't.
Yeah, he speaks Spanish.
So, yeah, it's a bit of an interesting thing here because, look, we have a lot of attractions in Texas. And so this is the ongoing movement to try to get rid of this, backwoods reactive type of mentality that a lot of the state feels like. And the best way to do that is exactly to do what Representative Moody is doing. Have this proactive approach to things that can help veterans who have a traumatic brain injury or any kind of mental health problem, those with PTSD and those who are suffering from this ongoing opioid crisis and try to do something different here. This is where we are, and we're following the lead of other states and trying to help out more particular programs from this type of tax and this type of finance.
The interesting thing about this whole story is, and I'm just going to throw that out there because, as much as I joke about Texas not being really a liberal or progressive place, let's keep in mind that one of the most liberal organizations that you have in Texas is the Dallas Cowgirls.
Yeah.
Before everybody laughs and goes, oh, God, Shaggy, here you are being a misogynistic pig. No, the Dallas Cowgirls were actually a very pro-feminist group back at their foundation, and as such, those performances, those outfits and everything were actually women being empowered, saying, look, here in Texas, nobody takes our guns or our tatas. Here they are, boys. I was absolutely fascinated by the early history of the Dallas Cowgirls. And then when you see things like, anything coming out of Austin and some of the stuff that's coming up in the new legislature, Texas is kind of a weird mix of old and new thinking, isn't it?
It absolutely is. That's one of the best ways to describe the state, because you have those who don't like any kind of change and they want to keep it that way. Then you have those who say we have to move forward. Dallas, the Dallas Cowgirls, they were the first cheerleading squad of any NFL team, and so this was really was a big stir-shaking moment there. Mm-hmm. So we always have to remember that. So yeah, I mean, you don't often think that Texas has been the most progressive place, but remember here, Texas was one of the few states that ratified that actually gave the women the right to vote before the 19th Amendment was ratified. I mean, women got the right to vote in 1918, mm-hmm. which is 2 years before the 19th Amendment was ratified. Actually, passed the Equal Rights Amendment in the 1970s. So you wouldn't often think of that, and so it's a bit of an interesting history that you look at this and go, it's been this progressive, this conservative, like what the heck? What's the schizophrenia going on here? So yeah, it's kind of fun.
You know, the thing is I mean, besides being schizophrenic, kind of the legislative, legislative stage, Texas is also kind of top of mind in the nation, because here's the thing. I mentioned this during the first part of the show. Look, a lot of the federal stuff that's happening could kind of run right into the head of what's happening at the state in Texas, because it all has to do with the same area. You, meaning you, the United States, that is not Texas, keep hearing something about a southern border wall, but which state, and I'm going to go to Drew for this one because I'm pretty sure he knows, which state in the United States actually has the lion's share of that border?
That would be Texas, yes. And there's an interesting question as to how this is going to work, because the terrain just it's just odd. I mean, you often hear about, well, it has to be along the southern border. Well, okay, well, that's a whole other conversation in and of itself. But the next step in this is where and what parts, because there are ranchers, there are farmers that have property that will go all along this, and so you have to wonder, is the federal government just going to come in and invoke eminent domain, which is a very term here that states that the government can come in and take your property, pay you for it, and then they'll take it. Is that what they're going to do with a lot of farmers and ranchers in a state that says, I don't like government takeovers? This is going to be not the easiest situation for the federal government to try to implement this. And when you look at the terrain of this, the makeup of the land, where's it going to go? There's a lot of plateaus, there's a lot of rocky areas, there's a lot of mountainous areas along that border. You have to wonder here, how is it going to make it work? And no one really has that answer.
Well, because in in statistics that would make Sam Houston come back from the grave and go, what the hell are y'all talking about? This week, when it came to the figures of all of the crime pouring into this country through that southern unwalled border, wouldn't that mean that, I hate to say this, but Drew, from what the president has been telling the rest of the nation, Texas is basically a half season off from the purge. Is that an accurate depiction of what safety is like in your state?
No, that's an interesting description. But when it comes to particular aspects about safety, you have those leaders who say, look, the only best safety is for you to be armed. And Texas is what's called a license to carry state. They have what's called open carry. Believe it or not, Texas actually has some interesting gun laws where if you want to openly carry, you have to have a license. You have to go through a class that is both textbook and range ways of doing it. Now, that class is only to protect the individual. It's not for the individual to become suddenly RoboCop.
No.
And so that's one misnomer about that. But what the president says about statistics is a great messaging thing that he and other Republicans have been able to do for years and years, and that's to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. The idea is that if you repeat the same thing every time that this comes up, that you will then essentially make people believe what you're saying. So you just keep saying it, that 4,000 people a day, 4,000 people a day, 4,000 people a day. Along that border wall, 4,000 people a day. You just keep saying it, people go, oh, well, it has to be that way.
Yeah.
And we're finding that, well, one, that's not even remotely true. And two, it's not at the southern border. It's at other areas. And it's not just by land, by sea, or anything. It's mainly at airports. So,
bingo.
Yeah. And so, and this administration is very good at stating the same thing over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. They were in trouble last week for trying to give all these members a raise during a shutdown. That got squashed. And then when they were trying to defend all the reasons that they were keeping the government shut down, they gave all those numbers that you were talking about. Kristen Nielsen from the Department of Homeland Security. Sarah Huckabee Sanders did it yesterday on a Fox News program, and the Fox News program host said, hold up, those numbers don't act. those numbers don't gel right. But
Yeah.
this is the thing. When he talks about all these people coming in, I'm like, I actually know a guy in Texas. So let me ask you, because when it comes to immigration, your state is kind of, unlike most states in the United States, kind of had more of a friendly devil-may-care attitude with people coming back and forth from Mexico, haven't you?
Yeah, look, there's been a time where we've said, get them out. There's been times when we said, no, we need them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Texas is heavily agricultural dependent. This is, the top producer of cotton in the United States. And so we have what's called a cotton patch in the western part of the state. And the top people who are going to go in and collect the cotton are not going to be the everyday farmer. They'll have particular immigrants who will be there to do that sort of thing and to do all the other jobs that people don't want to do. So the ongoing stereotype about the immigrant is that they're here and they're going to steal everything. They're going to kill you. They're going to rape the women, maybe even rape the men. I mean, they are just these terrible, awful people. And the president, again, was good at making people think that. And so was everybody on his side of the aisle when it came to the media outlets. Very good. And then suddenly you saw this caravan come out of nowhere. And then suddenly after the election, we don't really hear much about a caravan anymore. Oddly enough. So anyway, but Texas and other southern states are very dependent upon immigrant work. And that's just kind of where they are. The world needs cotton. The United States needs cotton, needs oil for most parts of it, and needs, corn and soybeans and other types of things that help us either produce food and the fiber and the fuel that make up this entire country. Texas is a big producer in that.
I gotta bring this up real quick because when we talk about big producers, Texas, since the 1900s, and this is kind of interesting, back in 1919, you guys wanted to get rid of the Mexicans, and guess what law you passed for the very first time? A marijuana prohibition. So
yeah, that sounds very 100 years ago.
Yeah. Texas a long time ago was like, hey, how do we get rid of the Mexicans? Did they smoke reefer? Yeah, make the reefer illegal. And that's exactly how the United States got down that path to begin with. And it was, of course, reiterated again in 1924 and such. But this is the weird thing. When they went for, the Mexicans, and they were like, get these dirty Mexicans out here, not like 3 years later, they were back at the border going, hey, Mexicans, could you please come back? We need help. And then all through during World War II, we had a very expansive immigrant work program in Texas from Mexico. So why is it, and I mean, we've only got like a minute or so left in the show here, but Drew, why is it that everybody wants to have an opinion about immigration, but when it comes to the actual state where this weird immigration is happening, you guys are like, nothing's bad here. Nothing's out of the normal.
Well, it all comes down to two words: elections and fear. And if you can make someone fearful of someone else, that they're going to take what you have away from you, you need someone to blame that on. And so there's a clear messaging here that the immigrant is going to just simply rape, kill, and steal everything that you have. And that's I mean, if you listen to the president's rhetoric on why we need a southern border wall, that's what he says.
Yeah.
Let alone the fact that there are Border Patrol agents who will tell you, no, we don't need a wall. That's not what's necessary here. We have to actually help the economies of Mexico and Central America. That it's not so much of an enforcement issue as it is an economic issue. You have to understand why they're coming to this area. And they're coming here for jobs. And when our economy is better than other places, especially southern border areas, that's why. I mean, why are we not seeing a great influx of people from the northern part of the country? That's what you always have to understand here. I mean, other than hockey and, what has really Canada given us that we really love? And don't say Justin Bieber, because I might just not come back.
Well, okay, but they did give us SCTV with John Candy, Rick Moranis, and all those people. So there's that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Drew, we have got to go. Everybody, until the next show, try to stay safe. Check out the website, shaggyjenkins.com. Till next time, love you, mean it. Gate in, bye.
See ya.